Alright, YouTube, this is going to be a video on building a better Democratic Party and on... This is going to be a video on building a better Democratic Party, and it's going to be a video on kind of... Yeah, it's light in my room, and I don't do my best work when I have light, but I'm going to be making... This video is going to be on how to make the Democratic Party better by looking at what they do wrong, and by reassessing the situation and kind of analyzing and then analyzing their problems and then solving those problems. And largely that's what Democrats themselves need to do, and that's really what my work in philosophy and sociology is all about. I analyze society's problems, and I try to solve society's problems based on my analysis, or I give solutions, or at least my theories as to what's wrong with society, and then my ideas about how to fix society, and to do so in a positive and effective way for everyone, or at least for as many people as possible. And I'm a bit like Jordan Peterson, whether I like to admit it or not, insofar as I can't really even solve my problems, but I'm trying to societies. It's a bit bizarre. Nevertheless, but that wasn't my problem with him. My problem with him was he was always giving self-help advice to individuals. But yeah, like he was the worst person ever to give self-help advice. But anyways, the problem with the Democratic Party is this. First of all, I want to make clear for Democrats or anyone else that don't understand this or don't get this. The problem with the Democratic Party is you're shooting the messenger, and you'll probably think, well, I'm just some kind of Republican or whatever, or don't worry about him, he won't vote for us anyway, or some crazy shit like that. But all you're doing is shooting the messenger. Because at the end of the day, it comes down to this. You are a political party. We in a democracy, and at the end of the day, in a democracy, you want to get as wide a portion or as wide of a intersection of the American public as possible to vote for you. And you want them to vote for you, and then you want to actually get into office and help solve some problems so that they will continue to vote for you. And you want them to do this because you want votes. And why do you want votes? Because if you get votes, you get more people into office. You get more people into the Senate, the Congress, the White House, into the government. You can appoint Supreme Court justices. You can do many of the things the Republicans have the honor and the privilege of doing currently. And you can do that by winning elections and by getting votes. And you want votes because if you get votes, you get more power. You get power, and if you get power, then you can do what you want in society, whatever that is. And let's be honest and face it, whether we like it or not, in a for-profit society or a capitalist country like ours, you also get more money, and that's really what all this is about anyways. And that goes for everyone, whether it's an establishment kind of hack and a fucking person like that, like say Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton, or it's a truly principled politician, if there is a such thing, with real beliefs, like a Bernie Sanders or a Tulsi Gabbard, or someone that actually does want to affect change in the world. Either way, you're still going to have more power. You're going to get more of what you want as a result of doing this. But you're not doing that what you're doing the way you're doing it now. And here's how you can fix that. And I want to bring it back to one of the core problems with the way the political parties work and the way that Democrats are being ran is they're not being ran is the issue of philosophers, for lack of a better word, or really philosophers, sociologists, revolutionary thinkers, or revolutionaries in some cases, and more or less leaders that, and I myself being involved in philosophy and sociology, that's my discipline, that's what I try to do, even if I suck at it, I try to, versus what they are, and that's politicians. They're technocratic, bureaucratic politicians. They're bureaucrats, they're politicians, and what they know is what they have been doing, and what they have been doing is the same thing they've been doing for like 100 years or more, like at least back to the 50s. It's the same shit. And what happened is they used to have rhetoric, and they had a certain kind of rhetoric that worked, and they would, really kind of harp on that rhetoric and just keep pushing that on people. And the thing is, people grew disillusioned with it because it's the same shit they say over and over and over and over again. And it was the same way until Trump came along. It was the same way with the Republicans. But they do that over and over and over again. And then whenever they're given a chance to actually solve any problems, they fail. More often than not, Democrats do not solve your problems. And of course, neither do the Republicans. Um, Trump may be solving some, but even with him, he's largely not solving your problems either. And people figure that out. You know, that like, hey, these people aren't actually doing anything of any good, and they start voting for them. And I think because they needed some rhetoric or some kind of fucking political talking points, and the old shit wasn't working, they looked around for something new. So they came up with a strategy to balkanize largely immigrant votes and female votes. And there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself, other than it's driven away a lot of white people and men who, and not just white men, but any combination of those two, whether it be both or one, they've driven away a lot of that. And that's a problem in part because, one, you want to get as many votes as possible. You don't want to just tell people not to vote for you, and that's more or less what you're doing. You don't want to insult potential voters. That's not smart, because that's not smart. And then what they also have failed to do is actually get immigrant or female voters, in part because they're too transparent, even though they don't intend to be. They're too obviously full of shit, and they're too obviously corrupt. You look back at under the Obama administration, he deported more Hispanic people than Trump has. And Hillary for years supported a fucking wall. They're obviously full of shit. And by the way, no one likes to be vote farmed. And I don't think vote farming or farming for votes is really the goddamn way to run a fucking political party. I don't think it works because I think, one, it's morally wrong, and two, I don't think that's the way it works. I don't think it works. It's morally and intellectually lazy. So, as a result of all that, they continually lose. And they lost that the last time around. Even when you ran a woman, they lost the majority of female votes. Trump not only got, I think, more or about as many of the black votes, he somehow managed to get more Hispanic people to vote for him. Or I'm not sure if they more voted for him. I know he got a huge percentage of Hispanic voters. Don't ask me how or why they voted for him, but he did. So, in fact, the only ethnic group he really lost with, outside of LGBTQ people, when I'm talking ethnicity, the only ethnicity he lost with was the Asian minority, the Asians. That was the only group he really lost decidingly, and by a large margin. The Asians voted for Hillary. Now, as to why the Asians specifically didn't like Trump, I'm not really sure. But that was the only group the Democrats won, and they didn't really even do anything to try to get their votes. They didn't vote for them, and they still managed to lose. I mean, they still managed to get that, and they lost all the ones they did vote for them. Beyond that, another issue I have, at least with male privilege, is I think largely it's bullshit. But even then, you're still steering and driving away men that might vote for you. Then meanwhile, with white privilege, I don't really mind that, and I think there's a lot of truth to some of it. But I also think that that's not something you want to tell white people that you might want to be potential voters or vote for you. You don't want to tell your voters they're assholes, especially for shit that in many cases they have no control over and can't help. So they've created a huge portion of white men, and just plain men, and even white women that don't want to vote for them. So they've scared off a huge portion of voters. And that's why I say they want to create a large percentage of voters, and they want to create a broad ranging demographic, or a mass assembly, a broad assembly, or alliance of voters, of potential voters, to vote for them. And they want to get from the middle potential Democrats and people that might or might not vote Democratic. And they have driven off Democrats. So they want to get back some of that old Democratic base that they used to have, in part because they used to go after that working class and even middle class majority and portion of the United States. They used to be all about things like raising the minimum wage. That's going to help them. Not being into wars. We're going to get you out of these wars. You have children overseas. We're not going to go to war without the approval of Senate and Congress. Then you saw it yourself when Obama got in, and not to mention how he kind of screwed the country by putting Hillary into his cabinet. And the war hawk, you already saw the war hawk she was. So, so much for women being less pro-war, like some of the feminists used to say before we got to see what Hillary herself has done. But the point is, they threw all that away, and no Democrats would challenge them and say anything to them. We saw that with our own eyes. And then potential Democrats or old school Democrats that used to be anti-war, that came out of the 60s counterculture movement, the hippies, the hippies, 1 minute. like kind of the old hippie yippie almost political portion of people. A lot of them left. A lot of them voted for Trump. A lot of them are Trump supporters now. Some of them jumped on the Ron Paul bandwagon. You got some people that do support Bernie Sanders, and they're kind of riding it out, kind of like my ass. I'm pretty much riding it out. I almost joined the Republicans my damn self. I think the major issue for me was the LGBTQ issue. There's a lot of bigotry around LGBTQ people, but other than that, I haven't seen a significant enough difference anymore between the Democrats and the Republicans to justify me remaining a Democrat. The only thing I have seen is that they are less anti-LGBTQ, and that is the only one thing I'll give them credit for. There is a lot of homophobic and anti-gay behavior in rhetoric in the right wing, and that is really the only reason I've stayed Democrat. Because I mean, the Republicans, if you look at Trump, for example, he's less pro-war than Obama was, and if Hillary had been in office, first of all, we would have bombed the shit out of Syria probably by now. Hillary would have done that because she's a war hawk, like I said. And then second of all, if Iran had hit those oil fields, and if they did, who knows? But had they hit those oil fields, or if they hit those oil fields with her in office, she probably would have declared all-out war on them. We would probably, if she had won, we'd be in World War III. So a lot of people looked at that and they were like, "Fuck this," and that's one of the damn reasons. That's one of the damn reasons, really, that Trump won. Was people didn't want to vote for her, and you saw that, and that's what politicians do, by the way. And I was about to talk about that in a little bit, but a lot of it is that backstabbing, politicking, kind of slit throat, they politic, they say what they want, they kiss ass, they backstab, they do everything they can to get themselves up. They lie, they spin things, they give you misinformation to get where they want to be. And then once they get there, they can't fucking back it up. In Hillary's case, not only could she not run the country, she couldn't even win the damn election to run the country, even with all the damn people in the media and the corporations and the banks and all these people supporting her. And even after she rigged the primary, she couldn't win. Bernie Sanders, on the other hand, won the damn primaries, and had he been the one to compete against Trump, might have been able to beat Trump. But we will never know now because they rigged the damn primary. But even while doing all that, once she fucked everyone over, once she got to where she wanted to be, once she did the social climbing that so many of these politicians do because they're a form of social climber, once she was able to do that, she could not back it up, and she could not beat Trump, and Trump is your president now. And that's part of the problem with the Democratic Party also. They lie and they deceive, they trick, and they do all the shit the politicians do, and all the politicking, backstabbing, underhanded, lying bullshit. But once they get to where they want to be or where they're supposed to be, they can't ever back it up, or they can't do the job. They can't do what they're supposed to do because they were never supposed to be in that position to begin with because they're not good enough. That was not what was meant for them to do. So then you have the issue of Thornburg, by the way, talking about all these Democrats now who can't do anything without reading a transcript or having a teleprompter. And there's a lot of Republicans like that too. Obama was constantly a guy who continued to read off the teleprompter. Well, one liberal and environmentalist, that girl, Greta Thunberg, who she was she was caught off guard and not really able to answer questions correctly, and she kind of behaved awkwardly, in part because of she didn't have a script. She was off script. And again, you're talking about a teenage girl here, or however old she is. I'm not really sure. And the thing is, you're acting as if though she should be able to compete with adults. And, she does very well for a girl her age. And she's got more sense than most adults do, because at least she's telling you need to take care of the environment. And that's what these shit-headed Republican inbred idiots don't understand, is that whether you fucking like it or not, when the earth goes, we all go. So, you should at least put politics to the side long enough to give a damn about the freaking environment. Alexandria Cortez has been known to, I guess, block people on Twitter like she's the only one. And it wasn't really a problem until she blocked someone in charge of a Jewish group. And I don't support her blocking them. I don't never block anyone. Even if someone can trash me, assault me, attack me, do whatever they want, I leave this shit up. The only damn time I will sometimes tell them, yeah, just keep on. I will sometimes tell them, however, that if you're going to just look, if I find a conversation with someone that they're just ignorant, they just keep going back and forth, and they're not really having a debate with me, and they're just kind of attacking me, and I see that it's going nowhere, I might tell them, look, you can say what you want, but I'm done talking to you, and I might just ignore them. And they can just say whatever they want. They can post 100 comments in a row if they want. I don't give a shit. But I will, in some cases, stop having anything. Like, I will stop debating them. But I don't block people. I don't mute people. I don't do any of that. And I think that's a form of cowardice in a way. But it is interesting to me. They didn't seem to give a shit about her doing that, where I have blocked very few people in my entire life. But it is interesting to me. They didn't seem to give a shit about her doing that until she blocked someone that they say is off limits. He's a protected person. You can't block him. You can all these other people, but not that guy. That's interesting. So that's an interesting event. And let's see. Yeah, there's some bullshit about there was one type of hormonal pill that was supposed to affect puberty, and it's a hormonal blocker that was used, but it's supposed to be used in someone that has some kind of condition related to aging, not for transgender people. And I don't know if that's true or not, or the details of that, or why they would prescribe that medicine to children. But I do know there are other forms of hormonal blockers that can be used for children that are transgender or wanting to transition gender. So it's not a situation where it just has to, damn you. So it's not a situation where it just has to be, or, you know, it has to be, it's not a situation where it has to be that. And I don't know about that. I know that they said there's over 6,000 deaths in the last 7 or 8 years or whatever it's been, or so, like 2014, 2019. Well, gee, I wonder if between 50 and 120 children die a year, or in or around 50 to 120 children die a year from genital mutilation or circumcision. I find it funny how you don't see odds journals talking about that problem, because that's gendered and that's considered the gender norm for boys in America. And you don't see anyone else talking about that problem. You certainly don't see any fucking Republican talking about that problem. But you want to attack transgender children who need hormonal treatment because they have an issue. And someone said that it was a psychological problem. You should treat it as a Someone said something to the effect it's a psychological problem. They should be treated as a psychological condition. And while that's not completely untrue, I would also like to remind you that while that's not completely untrue, I would also like to remind you that even if it is a psychological condition, and some people believe it to be, we also know the best way to treat that psychological problem is to simply let them be whatever gender they identify as. And if hormonal treatment is a part of that for people who are pubescent or going through puberty, after they have been given therapy, after the correct time has been rated and they've shown behavior like that for months or even years, and we begin to believe them to really have a serious mental condition, you should give them that hormonal treatment and just let them be the gender they are. And that really is the best. But that really is the best treatment for children, transgender children, certainly for adults, but also transgender children and teens or teenagers. That's the best treatment for them, is to just let them be transgender. Stop trying to tell other people you know what they are better than they do, and just let them be who they are. Let them be transgender because they are transgender, and it's none of your damn business what they do. And there's some other stuff I wanted to talk about, but I'm going to end it there. P666.